All right, our next project. We are adding a new skill, which is type design, often called typography. Knowing how to mess with type, design type as a visual element to be as effective as possible. So in digital art circles, especially in design art circles, there's usually a fun project, which is just to design one letter form as compelling a way as possible. So these are basically spot illustrations of one letter. And it shows all of these really, really varied approaches to type design. Some vector, some raster, some simple, some complicated, some soft edged, some hard edged, some colorful, some monochromatic. So many different approaches that show just a whole lot of personality just in the visual approach. What we are going to do is take that idea and combine it with our spot illustrations to create a poster, right? And the image on a poster is important, but the text is equally important. So if we look at something like this, I'll do this as a slideshow. When text and image are designed by the same artist, as they will be with this project, and which isn't always common practice in the professional world, it gives you the opportunity to really make some smart decisions. So if we look at this, you'll see that the spot illustration is incredibly compelling. It uses an old patent engraving that's modified digitally of a revolver, and it kind of turns it on its end and turns it into almost a schematic for a building with these interior spaces. And then with vector imagery, it uses all of these silhouettes to kind of occupy and activate that space to make it more compelling. And then those characters are connected to the type solution with these chords. And then the word, the letter form itself is not just a given font that's unmodified. It's spaced in such a way to have all this tension. You see how the E's bigger than the C, how the I kind of trails on the border of the top edge. And so it says Inception as kind of a fan art design of this movie. And the letter forms here don't even really tell you the name of the film in a straightforward way, but they become completely integral to the image. And if that's done well, then the background can be really simple. And those are by far the two most important components of any poster design. The spot illustration, kind of focal point, and then of course the main text. So some other examples. A fan art, digital design of Dirty Harry, the Clint Eastwood movie, using a logo design approach, right? Positive and negative space. So you have his face here being created in the negative space with his revolver that he uses. It's like a really big gun. Now, the text there has to support it. So it supports it in terms of color choices and also just in terms of its spacing. So even though it's small, this text is incredibly important to kind of grounding the illustration and helping it work. So even text approaches that seem really basic, a designer has to make sure that the spacing between the letters, in this case that's really been widened, all fits as best as it can to support the image. So that's what we're going to be working on, text designs. When you just have an image alone, everything can work well within it in terms of a hierarchy of focal points. But then when you add text, that text needs to not distract from what's going on in the image itself. So there are lots of different strategies for that. Sometimes you create an internal border and then you just float the text above that border, but you might use the text and inform the colors based on the illustration, like this, and it's very common in album covers. And then there's other approaches as well. Just kind of default fun uses of text which mix serif and sans serif fonts. That's something you'll see a lot. Decorative fonts with more modern fonts. Mix bolds and not bolds, and capitals and not capitals, and sizes to decide what's the main focal point, right? And you can also use text as not just conveying information, but as a way to lead the eye through an image. So in the case of kind of old comics, which will always have what's called a flag text, which gives you the name of the comic, which is always designed the same way, they'll often weave it in and out of the image. You see how it's behind her head here, but in front of the leaves here, so that the text becomes kind of integral to the reading of the whole image. So we're going to play with this. And then with the spot illustration and the text, we will then put a background, just a simple background fill to make a finished poster. All right, so where do we start? Well, we need to start with our spot illustration design. And that's going to be the basis of our poster. And we can realize that there's still more we can do with our spot illustrations to make them stronger, even just as spot illustrations. So let's look at this. And there's certain things I know I want to do with this, my Sir Exxon of the burning water, with adding text to make an Earth Day poster in the future. But I still haven't finished off that spot illustration. And so I think I will use this one for this demo. Just for instructional purposes. So I'll open these two, and I'll show you kind of what I have in mind. Now, you'll, just like you researched different colors for your spot illustrations, maybe different line art solutions, the text that I'm thinking of to go with leaf, a link holding a leaf as a parachute, I want to make text like an airline advertisement for Zelda Air. So I might look for airline logo types. And a logo type is, it's like a logo, but it contains a text solution. So while Photoshop's slow to start, I can look at some of these. I mean, there's a ton of airlines. And I'm not so interested in just the logo solutions. I'm interested in the way the text works with them. Because the text solutions, to some extent, will tell us on a subliminal level that it's an airline. You'll notice that airline logos very often will be kind of thinner font forms because they want to feel light, like they're lifting up. They'll often be italicized or leaning. They're more commonly dynamic. Right. So this seems like a good kind of modern one to use as a reference. So I'll just save that to my desktop. And let's see if I can find some others. Notice how simple the airlines is. And even though that's a much longer word, it commands very little visual space. The bold, lowercase, the different colors, that could work really well for Link Airlines or Zelda Airlines. Just look this up. So here's a Malaysia Airlines that's kind of like that. Other type solutions that might stand out to me. So AirAsia stole its type design from Virgin Airlines, which is kind of a fun script font. So you see the kind of approach, the bold, italicized approach that seems like that's going to inform me very well. Even Qantas. And then this is maybe the most iconic, American and United. But they're just not that exciting, right? But they can all help inform. So once I've gathered my reference, and that'll be a good idea for you, thinking what text should go with your spot illustration to make it more engaging. And then what do you want that text to communicate, just in its form? So my joke here is to make my link design more believable as a legitimate airline. The next challenge is to kind of sketch out your solution. So I'm going to go ahead and really widen my canvas around my spot illustration to 30 by 40 inches. Just so I can play with text running around it in different ways. And you can do this in your sketchbook as well. So my first approach might be make a new layer. This is called blocking out text. Just think, do I want something above it kind of arching, maybe to match the curve of the leaf, right? And then maybe something under it like that. So that would be a common text solution to go with the curves and the dynamics of this spot illustration. Or let's try another. If I'm wanting to go and be influenced by some of these, I'm going to want my text to be italicized, right? And maybe underneath. So it might be like this. Blocky, italicized. And then maybe this would be like a script font. How does that look? Well, that's a solution. Or I might want a similar solution kind of up at the top, or maybe even off kilter a little bit, like push so there's no space between the letters. And what am I inspired by? And then maybe just tuck this in. Okay. So sketching it can really help you see different approaches. And actually, the one I like best is this. And that's going to require a little bit more research because I want to find the Legend of Zelda type solution. Not the characters, but the logo type. And this is kind of what I was thinking, I think, subliminally. The kind of blocky text there, but with the big Z and almost no space between the letters. But that is made to look kind of medieval. It has lots of serifs. So I want to work kind of between these. But I'll probably use the big Z. And I want to make it look more like an airline. And there are some pretty amazing type solutions out there. You can make it look like 80s graffiti if you want, or neon signs, or it's done by an old typewriter. But you can see that some are more successful than others.